hearts, open minds.
Today is May 12th, 2026. This is Eyes on Intel. The subject matter today is heavy. It is dense with the weight of human struggle, but we have a responsibility to keep the ledger open. Each one of these injustices must be exposed to the light, so take a seat, take a breath, and let's get started. The economic shifts we are witnessing right now tell a deeply complex, incredibly volatile story that goes far beyond the abstract numbers on a corporate spreadsheet. Recent reports are highlighting a severe, localized economic chilling effect of the latest, highly aggressive immigration crackdowns, and the financial shockwaves are rippling outward, rapidly hollowing out local workforces and leaving small business owners scrambling to survive in an artificially created labor shortage. Industries that have historically relied on immigrant labor, vital sectors like industrial agriculture, meatpacking, and commercial construction, are feeling a suffocating, existential squeeze. We are seeing vast agricultural fields going entirely unharvested and thousands of pounds of crops rotting on the vine, massive municipal infrastructure projects stalling indefinitely due to a sudden lack of crews, and the broader consumer economy taking a palpable, measurable hit. When entire communities are terrorized and driven into the shadows, people immediately stop spending money. They stop going to local grocery stores, they pull their children from extracurriculars, and local tax bases begin to systematically crumble. This isn't just a distant theoretical policy debate, it is a localized economic crisis happening in real time, a self-inflicted wound on the national supply chain that is driving up the cost of basic goods for everyone. And the human cost of this sweeping, militarized enforcement, it is absolutely staggering, defying basic moral comprehension. Just look at what is currently unfolding in places like Berks County, Pennsylvania, where the federal U-Visa process, a system originally designed and codified by Congress to protect undocumented victims of severe crimes like domestic abuse and human trafficking, is being structurally and intentionally weaponized. Individuals who bravely stepped forward to assist local law enforcement, who trusted the legal system to protect them from their abusers, are now finding themselves caught in a sprawling, inescapable enforcement web. Advocates and local police chiefs alike are pointing out the heartbreaking, dystopian reality that vulnerable victims are being actively targeted at courthouses and police stations when they show up to testify. This approach doesn't just betray the victims who are seeking asylum from violence, it completely destroys community trust in local law enforcement, virtually guaranteeing that future violent crimes will go entirely unreported, directly empowering abusers and creating an atmosphere of deep, paralyzing fear across the nation. This profound systemic fear is only compounded by deeply troubling, heavily redacted reports emerging from the privatized detention centers themselves. There is the chilling, unresolved case of Everly Wihongi, a citizen of New Zealand who has allegedly gone entirely missing from an enforcement facility. The critical questions surrounding Wihongi's sudden disappearance are mounting by the hour, with international observers, indigenous Maori advocates, and domestic civil rights groups demanding immediate, unredacted transparency. How does a human being simply vanish while in federal custody, inside a highly securitized facility specifically designed for total panoptic surveillance and absolute physical control? The deafening, bureaucratic silence from federal authorities, it doesn't just deepen the agonizing anxiety for families waiting for answers, it exposes the terrifying systemic lack. The cultural pushback to this glaring lack of accountability has been loud and entirely unapologetic, cutting straight through the noise. Just last night in Oakland, California, a city with a rich, enduring history of radical, grassroots resistance, Hayley Williams took the stage and completely refused to mince words, using her massive, global platform to explicitly condemn the agency with a resounding, expletive-laden statement against the ongoing mass detentions and seamlessly linking domestic oppression to global struggles by simultaneously calling for a free Palestine. The intersection of these global and domestic movements, the shared unifying language of anti-militarization, anti-confinement, and human rights is becoming impossible for the mainstream media to ignore or sanitize. The massive crowds are responding with overwhelming support, and the sheer unfiltered frustration of a deeply disillusioned generation is boiling over into mainstream pop culture, proving that artists are no longer willing to separate domestic border enforcement from global human rights abuses. But while the public, cultural protests grow exponentially louder, the legislative crackdowns are tightening their grip on the very institutions meant to protect civil liberties. Down in Tennessee, Governor Bill Lee just signed a sweeping, unprecedented, and highly controversial measure into law, one that directly threatens the very constitutional foundation of judicial independence. Judges who refuse to actively collaborate with federal immigration authorities, who are deemed by the state to be obstructing lawful operations, now face being dragged before the state's Judicial Oversight Board for formal misconduct proceedings and ultimately completely removed from their elected or appointed offices. The legislation provides dangerously little direction on what actually constitutes this supposed obstruction. If a judge demands a proper constitutional warrant before allowing armed federal agents into a courtroom, is that now considered obstruction? This vague, sweeping language leaves independent judges highly vulnerable to partisan political purges simply for upholding the due process rights of those standing before them. It is a stark authoritarian escalation, effectively conscripting local, state-funded courts, state-fund safe. Yet, amid all this heavy, suffocating, and relentless news, there are moments of profound relief, moments that remind us of the immense, world-changing power of relentless coordinated advocacy. Olivia Andre, a 19-year-old nursing student with her whole life ahead of her, has just spent 6 agonizing, terrifying months locked inside the Dilley Trailer Prison in Texas. Half a year of her young life, stolen, trapped in a substandard, deeply traumatic environment while she was actively studying to heal others. But today, the tide has finally turned, and she is heading home to Maine, thanks to the tireless, unbroken, around-the-clock efforts of her family. The heavy, sustained political intervention of Congresswoman Pingree, the massive digital amplification by creators like Miss Rachel, and a fiercely dedicated team of pro bono attorneys who refuse to take no for an answer. Olivia's nightmare is finally ending. In just a few hours, she will walk through her front door and embrace her family. But the sobering fact that it took this level of intense, high-profile mobilization just to free one innocent teenager speaks volumes about the bureaucratic, dehumanizing nightmare of the system itself. As we reflect on these entries in the ledger today, from the economic fallout to the physical shackling of grieving mothers, we have to ask what kind of society we are becoming. We keep the ledger open because to look away is to allow the darkness to spread unchecked. Stories like Olivia's highlight the intense, unyielding fight for bodily autonomy and fundamental freedom that is currently at stake, a theme that is being deeply, critically explored in recent independent journalism. Particularly the concept of the capitalized womb, we are witnessing a horrifying dystopian intersection where reproductive justice and the carceral state directly, violently collide, where the bodies of the most vulnerable are commodified, intensely monitored, and structurally controlled within these sprawling, for-profit systems. The reality of what they've done, the sheer unapologetic scale of the capitalization of human lives to pad the bottom lines of private contractors, demands our unflinching, undivided attention. It is a stark, urgent reminder that the fight for bodily autonomy absolutely does not end at the clinic doors. It extends deeply into the cold cells, the solitary trailers, and the hidden facilities of this sprawling apparatus. If this kind of independent reporting matters to you, if you believe in the vital importance of holding these systems accountable, please consider subscribing to our dedicated Substack publication, Eyes on Ice. It is the central hub where we document the abuses, organize the video evidence, and build a community truly committed to transparency. Subscribing is the single most powerful way to support this continuous monitoring and keep the work entirely independent. So please take a moment to find Eyes on Ice on Substack and join us. As you move through the rest of your day, carry these stories with you, stay vigilant, and please remember, open hearts, open minds.